Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Financial First Aid, hosted by Vera McCoy. That's me, yours truly. I'm so excited that you decided to join me for what I know will become a great resource for new and seasoned entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, and even some 9 to 5ers. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or an individual who has an idea that you want to transform into a business, Financial First Aid is here to help you move in the right direction from idea to development to implementation. Today, I am so honored to have Wendy Lipton Dibner. She is one of the nicest persons that I know, first of all. So humble. Um, she's a 5-time bestseller author and internationally recognized authority on business acceleration through impact strategy and ethical influence, a social researcher by training and entrepreneur by choice. Wendy has built 10 businesses of her own and helped thousands of Fortune 500 healthcare, entrepreneurial, and nonprofit organizations increase revenues exponentially by making a measurable difference in people's lives. As president and CEO of Professional Impact, Wendy has touched millions of lives through her books, world-class speaking engagements, sold-out live events, popular media appearances, and virtual training programs. She's presented at the United States Senate and serves as a trusted advisor to top influencers, executives, entrepreneurs, and credentialed experts worldwide. Forbes magazine called Wendy's strategies the secret to success in business, and Inc. magazine described her focus on impact, strategic map as your path to profitable success. And I'd like to welcome you today, Wendy, to my podcast. It's great to have you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Vera, thank you so much for having me. I love that you're doing this. You're going to help so many people. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the goal. Let me just give a shameless plug for two books that I've read of yours. One, Focus on Impact. It was a great read. Gave me so much information on the idea that if you focus on helping people and doing things that will impact their lives in a positive way, then you too will benefit from that. And then the second one that I read was Shatter Your Speed Limits. Is that right?
Yeah, good.
I read that one too. That one is a short, quick read. And it's a nice read because it's done kind of in a storytelling format. And I enjoyed it. So the first one, Focus on Impact, is really geared towards getting you, moving in the right direction and thinking about your business if you're going to be an entrepreneur in a different way than just focusing on your bottom line, your production, those kinds of things. If you look at your business as an attempt or as a mission to focus on how you can impact people's lives, you actually will be benefiting yourself and your business as well. So you're helping a lot of people and you're helping yourself at the same time. And the Shatter Your Speed Limits just helps get you there a little faster.
Well said. Thank you. That's very wonderful surprise there. Thank you so much for your plug.
Yes. So what motivated you to begin your journey of entrepreneurship? And, just give people a little information about your background and how you got to become an entrepreneur.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I'd be happy to. So I had never planned on a life of entrepreneurship. I think if anybody had told me I was going to do this, I would have laughed. But the truth is, I wanted to be Barbara Streisand, right? As you know,
Yes.
Seriously, about as far away from entrepreneurship as you can imagine. But of course, I needed a day job. And I took a position as a director of research through a university. And, I wasn't making much money. I was making $13,000 a year. And this was back in the early 80s, so it was like, oh, but to me, that was a ton of money. It was more than I'd ever made. And it was a great job. And I loved learning and I loved helping people and I loved teaching at the university. And it was all good. And we were really doing some interesting research. I was working at a Center for Organizational Research and Evaluation Studies, and it was great. And then we got hired by an organization that wanted us to evaluate their hospital. And so I was managing that project, and it was a lot of research and a lot of work. And about 2.5 years into the study, we got noticed by the United States Senate. And they asked us to come and present the results of the study we were doing, because they were in the process of trying to make some decisions about healthcare and insurance and this kind of stuff. And the process turned to be very political and extremely geared towards making sure that our client, the hospital, looked good, right? So they sent 6 attorneys from the hospital to sit in my little baby office to, I mean, I'm talking baby, we're talking cubicle here, and 6 of them and me at my desk, right? And they were watching every single move I made, Vera. It was stressful, to say the least, but it was also crazy. Every time I wrote out a paragraph about a piece of data, they would tweak it and change it. And it wasn't illegal what they were doing, but it was bordering on ethics. And I was like 22 years old. What did I know about ethics? But I knew something wasn't right. Well, by the time we got to Washington for me to present the whole report to the senators, they had completely changed the report. So instead of just being a straightforward data-driven document, it had ways of saying things that just made everything a little bit different. And that day was so stressful for me that by the time it came time to actually present, I was a nervous wreck. And I opened the report, but when I saw how much they had changed it, I decided that I wouldn't read it. And I just started talking and started telling, look, here's what we found. I mean, nobody knew the data better than me, right? So I could just talk and talk and talk. And somewhere in there, and this is really important, I think, for all of your listeners to understand, what shifted in me is that I realized keeping my job was important, but keeping my integrity was more important. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to just be truthful, and I knew the hospital would come out looking fine anyway, and it all was going to work out. But by the time it was done, I realized I couldn't do that anymore. And on that day, I made 2 really important decisions. And one is that one person can make a major change in the world if we just stick to our ethics and do what's right. Then we can't go wrong.
Right.
But the other thing I learned is that I really was not born to be an employee. I mean, doing things the way my boss wanted me to do it, as opposed to the way I felt it, that was just so not me. So I went back to Fort Worth, took a big risk, quit my job, sat down at a typewriter. Those were the days when we actually typed on typewriter. Typed out a 1-page proposal with a lot of whiteout on it, clearing out all the mistakes, and walked in the next day to a bank and told them I wanted them to loan me $50,000 to open a new business that would have nothing to do with profitability. I wanted to open the business as a social laboratory to prove that we could make more money if we focused on making a difference in people's lives than on profitability. Now, in those days, I was talking about, we're going to focus on impact, but nobody was using the word impact in those days, except, like if the plane crashed. I mean, they really weren't using the word. Now it's become such a popularized word. We use it as much as we use the word love. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to understand what that is, and we can talk about that in a second. But I opened that business to prove that it could be done, and we never talked about money in my little shop. We never had prices anywhere. We asked a lot of questions of our customers, and we helped them to figure out what would give them the life they wanted based on what we had to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And for 6 months, all my staff, all my employees, they had zero experience in business. So we were basically making it up.
As you went.
Lost a lot of money. Yeah, totally. Lost a lot of money for the first 6 months, just all money out, no money in. But we were focused on impact.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 6th month, something turned around. And
Now, excuse me, what kind of business was it?
This was a retail and sales business. It was a full service spa and salon for men and women.
Okay.
At a time when no one was doing that.
Right.
It was very, very different than anything certainly anybody had done in Texas. And it was more along the lines of what I had seen growing up in New York City.
Okay.
But it was completely different, and it was doomed to fail from day one, and everybody knew it. But I was determined, and so I just stuck to my guns. And within 1 year, we were breaking industry sales records. People were coming up to me, asking me how we did it. I started being invited to consult and do speaking engagements because we were making so much money and we were so successful, but nobody could figure out how we'd done it. And 3 years later, I exited that business for 60 times what I had put into it, which again was like, what? And that began the journey of entrepreneurship. And I spent the rest of my life till now opening up more and more businesses and working with other businesses in every industry you can imagine, all to prove that it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just because I had the right idea at the right time. That wasn't it at all.
Right.
It's that when you focus on impact, you make more money than when you don't.
Right.
It's really quite extraordinary. So that's how it went.
Okay, great. And really, at least from what I know of you, that's kind of been your mission all along. Focusing on impact, and that'll grow your business. So don't focus on yourself as much as you should focus on the impact you can make in other people's lives. And that really has been your mission. And with that has proven for you to be phenomenal. And everyone, who you've had the opportunity to work with, that's great.
Right. And to be clear, Vera, just so that your listeners understand, this isn't a woo-woo, just focus on this. It's strategic. Right?
Of course, right.
It's building the operations, it's building the business, it's building the marketing, it's building everything for one goal, which is to make a measurable difference in people's lives.
Fantastic.
Opposed to trying to get rich. That's the difference.
Right, exactly. And so through your various consulting work and all the things that you've done, what are some of the experiences that you've had with regard to helping and assisting other entrepreneurs achieve their goals? What are some of the things that you've done for them?
Great question. So the thing is that for the first, I want to say 25 years, I was opening my own businesses, right? I had opened 10 businesses and I was being hired by corporations and healthcare and nonprofit organizations, right? And small businesses, but they were all existing already.
Okay.
And then around 2010, maybe, a little before then, 2000, whatever, about 10 years ago. I started getting people coming up to me and saying, Wendy, I want to do what you do. I don't want you to help me in my corporation. I want to leave my job and build my own business. And those were the questions I was getting from corporations, from doctors, from executives, from employees, from nurses, from healthcare workers, from everyday employees, people coming up to me and saying, I don't want a job. I want to own my own business. Will you teach me how you did it?
Right. That's why you're so perfect for this show.
There you go. So if you're listening right now and you either lost your job or you
Right.
want to lose your job, but
That's
you want
right.
to make your
That's
choice.
right.
Right, exactly. So what I did was I decided to help. The first thing I did was I wrote Shatter Your Speed Limits
Mhm.
to make sure that people would get out of their own way and understand that if you're going to take a whole different set of actions, you have to get clear on those actions. So that's what Shatter Your Speed Limits was about.
Mhm.
And it also helped me to attract the kind of audience, the new audience. So Shatter Your Speed Limits was about moving away from corporations, although it actually got me more speaking than I thought it would. And moving into the entrepreneurial life. And that worked well for me. So lesson number one is write a book, write
Okay.
a good book and get it
Okay.
out there.
Okay.
And write that book to talk to the audience that you want to attract,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So that you will. And I did. And so in 1 year, I built a following of about 1 million people who had either read Shatter Your Speed Limits or seen me speak. I got a lot of invitations into entrepreneurial stages and started speaking there. And I started to notice that what was going on in those seminars wasn't great,
Okay.
where I was talking.
Okay.
I was learning some very bad stories from the attendees about hundreds of thousands of dollars that they had spent to get help and, these get rich quick things. And they had spent a whole lot more than they had gotten back. Most of them had spent all their money. They were in debt on their credit cards. A lot of people were moving into bankruptcy, all because nobody was giving them how to do it. They were telling them what to do, but not how to do it.
There you go.
And frankly, I got angry about it. And
Mhm.
so I said, all right, I'm going to teach a course that shows people how to teach effectively, how to speak effectively, how to write effective books. If you're going to help people with your expertise, let's make sure that you do it in a way that really helps them.
Mhm.
And I was so mad. And I started this event and it took off. I mean, it was crazy. I never expected this. So I did the event. It was my Move People to Action event.
Yes, that I attended.
Right.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
And I was only going to do it the one time. And I was going to shoot it as an e-course and put it up online and go back to doing what I, with that. No. So 10 years later, right? I mean, well, actually 9 years later, I'd done 10 events for Move People to Action and also ended up doing spin-off events based on questions I had gotten, right? I was coaching wannabe entrepreneurs, everything from retirees
Mhm.
to moms and dads and teachers and students. And oh my gosh, it was so diverse. It was so amazing. And then along the way, I discovered other problems that I wanted to go fix. And so then I launched my 11th business and I'm working on that now. So it's the entrepreneurial thing came to me
Mhm.
based on the problems that I saw.
Right.
And in general, my experience is if we look at what's going on out there that's a problem,
Mhm.
find one thing that we can do
Mhm.
that will help that problem be less in the
Right.
world,
Right.
that's how we succeed in business.
Right. Right. Great. Yeah. And hopefully those people who are listening now will begin to think in terms of, I see a problem. Let me see if I can figure out a solution to the problem, and that could be my business.
You bet.
You
That's
know,
the best way to figure out what kind of business to do.
there you go. There you go. That way you're not, kind of putting yourself in a situation where you're just starting a business to be starting a business and not having a focus on actually solving a problem. Because there's a bunch of problems out here right now that we really could use somebody or a lot of somebodies to help solve. That's for
Well
sure.
said. Really well said.
Yeah. So along the way, that you had a couple of bumps along the way, like any entrepreneur would, and you found yourself in a situation where you were forced to file bankruptcy. I've been in that situation, so I know. And
Yeah,
so what was the thing that happened that created that problem
it was a
or that
series.
situation?
Yeah, it was a series of things. When I sold my first business, I had tons and tons of money and it was all good.
Mhm.
And then I opened a second business and it took a couple of years to get that organized. And on the day that I opened my second business was Black Monday, 1987. And I lost everything on that day along with everybody else. And so I was starting from scratch again, but it worked out and it was all good. And the second business worked. And then I went to open a third business. And my third business was really doing well. And it was all based on a combination of things: speaking, retail sales of audio and videotapes that weren't mine. I had purchased a franchise to be able to sell other people's motivational books and tapes. So I had a franchise for that. I had my own speaking engagement and consulting and all of that. And I hired a team. And so I had people all over the US who were getting me booked to have consulting and speaking engagements. And then I would fly to the next city and I would do my speech and then I would meet with the managers. And it was every single city I went to, I was booking major speaking. So what happened was I would go into a city, I would do a 3-hour thing, right? And that 3-hour thing would lead to appointments at corporations. And then I would go to the corporations and I would inquire and find out about their problems and see if I could help. And if I could help, I would offer them how. And 10 out of 10 said yes.
Great.
So it was incredible. So what was happening was I was booking my calendar. I was out a year and a half of my calendar in just 6 months of people wanting to bring me in to hire me. And I looked at that calendar and I thought, this is too cool. I want to expand. I want to get more employees. I mean, this is amazing. I started counting up the amount of money that I could make based on this, and then started hiring more people. And then I started doing some of these things, and they were handing me these checks. Vera, I was getting $250,000 for a weekend. I mean, it was crazy. And I was making so much money. And all of a sudden, I couldn't stop thinking about the money.
Okay.
I just couldn't stop. There was so much. I mean, oh my gosh, that was more money than I ever thought I would make in my whole life.
Right.
And I started making all this, like every week I would get these 5, 6, 7 figure. It was crazy. And along the way, I forgot to notice the little things that I had used to pay attention to. Like I always sent thank you notes. And I always sent agreements that were very detailed in terms of here's what I'm going to do and here's how we're going to do it. And it was very clear what I was going to do. And I had always written them myself because that's what I did, right? I didn't have an attorney. I mean, I had a corporate attorney, but not for this kind of stuff, right? This was a personal relationship. They asked for my help. I said I would help them. I went for, well, all of a sudden, there was a big announcement that we had gone to war in the Gulf. It was the first Gulf War in the early 90s. And all of a sudden, all of the corporations started to call my office and cancel because it was war and they didn't know what was going to happen to the economy and they didn't want to be committed to training and spending all that money when they didn't know what the economy was going to do. And overnight, I went from multi-million-dollar enterprise to zero with a ton of debt because I had opened all these offices with credit cards and signed all these contracts that I would do all this stuff and I couldn't fulfill the contracts. And all my employees, I had promised them all. So I started to let the offices go, and one by one, I had to let my employees go, which frankly is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, other than when my mom got sick, right? And then I still had nothing. I couldn't pay my bills. They were piling up. the sheriff came and banged a note on my door, a notification of eviction. It was terrorizing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was single, I was living alone, and I couldn't support myself at all. And I went to my attorney and I said, how do I get out of these contracts? He said, you can't. They gave you really good contracts and you're just going to have to file bankruptcy. You really have no choice here because it's that or jail.
Okay. But see, here's the beautiful thing about it. When that happened, what motivated you and kept you thinking in your mind, hey, listen, okay, I got a hit, but I'm going to work my way through this and I'm going to continue to move on, because you knew, even though you were at a bump in the road, that being an entrepreneur was really still your thing. So what kind of kept you moving through that whole thing?
It was really quite simple. I needed a job.
Okay.
I looked in my kitchen and I had a bag of egg noodles, a thing of cottage cheese, and a jar of boysenberry jelly.
Okay. That doesn't sound very nutritious.
Actually, it's a really good combination.
Oh, okay. I would try it sometime.
But that was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, baby. So it got to the point where I just really needed a job.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking about entrepreneurship. I wasn't thinking about impact. I was thinking about survival.
Okay. You came down to survival. Okay.
That's it. And so I took a job selling makeup at JCPenney.
Okay. Okay.
But don't forget that my first business was in the beauty industry.
Was a spa, exactly.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So, and I had built like 200,000 million different formulas, like literally 200 plus formulas, for how to do that in a way that was different than anyone else.
Okay.
And so I walked into JCPenney and I started selling like crazy. And they started asking me, how are you doing this?
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, I'll tell you, but you'll have to pay me. That really, seriously, I was still very focused on money.
Right.
And I was walking home that first day after I learned this, and I realized that's the problem. That's how I got into trouble.
Okay.
I had lost my focus on impact.
Okay.
And I had gotten so money driven that that's how I went bankrupt.
Okay.
And so I decided not to do that anymore.
Right.
And the next day I went back to JCPenney and I told my colleagues behind the counter that I wasn't going to sell anymore. That anybody who came up to me, I was going to give to them and they would get all the commissions, but that I would get more people to the counter. And I started holding motivational seminars from behind the counter of JCPenney.
At JCPenney's, isn't that something? That's a great story. That's a great story.
And that's what happened. And the whole store would start sending all these people to me to hear this thing, including the employees. JCPenney was not happy about that. And what ended up happening was all those people were hanging out, and all the women, as long as they're hanging out anyway, you try a tube of lipstick, whatever. And our little counter was making more money than any of that brand all over the country in JCPenney. And they ended up hiring me to consult, and one thing led to the next, and I was back in business.
Okay, there you go. That's a great story. I love it. I love it.
All I had to do was remember to focus on impact, and the rest took care of itself.
Okay. And so that's the one of the nuggets that people hopefully will take from this podcast episode. Hey, you know what? If things go down the tube, go back to your original game plan. And for you, that was focused on impact.
Right.
For someone else, it could be something different. But for you, that was your original focus, and that's what you stuck to, and that's what got you out of that situation.
Exactly.
So what would you have done? What would you do differently now to have avoided that?
Oh, well, two things. First of all, I would make sure that I focus on impact.
Okay.
And, since then I've been very fortunate to have made a ton of money, but I don't look at it. I had an accountant that handled all of the revenue coming in. And then when I got married, I asked my husband, will you handle all the money? Because I don't want to know. I don't want to know what we're spending, and I don't want to know what we're getting.
Okay. Okay.
And then I designated a wall in my office that is all about thank you notes.
Okay.
And every time I get a thank you note, that's how I know I'm succeeding.
There you go. Okay.
So because of that, I have a ton of jewelry. And I live in a very nice house, and I have a lovely existence because no matter what, I never lost focus on impact. The second thing I learned was that I would never again sign a contract without a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Because all the reason that I went broke, in terms of the legality of that, Vera, is that I never thought to say, look, if you book my time, you're going to have to put down a non-refundable deposit.
Okay.
And that never occurred to me. And I never thought to ask an attorney. So at the end of the day, you know, don't do something in a business unless you have someone who knows more than you watching what you do.
Okay, that's great.
That's
great.
at the end of the day, that's what you've got to
do. And so what do you think are some steps that our listeners can take right now to accelerate their growth and maximize their finances?
Right. Good. So yeah, it starts with focusing on impact, which means you've got to define what is your impact. So first, let's just define the word that the way we're using it.
Yes.
Impact is the measurable difference you make in people's lives as the direct result of contact with you, your team, your marketing, your products, and your services. The key word there, Vera, is it has to be measurable. And so you've got to define, how will you measure what you've done? How will you measure the difference you've made? So the first step is to find a problem that you want to solve. Okay. And there's a lot of them out there, as you said earlier. So focus on a problem that you think you could make a difference in. And then start stalking that problem on the web. Find out what people are saying who have that problem, because that is your marketing gold. Find out the problem, measure it, do little survey monkeys, find out from your Facebook community or from your, your Twitterverse or whatever, whoever you can talk to, what the people who have that problem, what are they missing in their lives? What do they need more of? And how is that problem affecting them today, right? And how would they like their lives to be different, and have them tell you what they really want. Then sit down and take a piece of paper and imagine a pond, right? If you throw a pebble in a pond, it's going to create ripples. So what you've got to figure out is what they told you they want. Those are all the ripples that you are going to make happen to help them get everything they want. The first stone you're going to throw in is your product or your service. So the first product or service you send out there is designed to make a measurable difference in your customers' lives. What is that difference? How will you measure it? You'll go back to that community who uses your product and say, tell me how you did. And you email them, and you talk to them, and you get on calls with them and Zooms with them, and whatever you can do, even if it's only 3 people that you've helped, and find out how they have changed as a result of your product. And then here's the secret. Ask them what that one little change they made because of you did to the rest of their life. Because every single ripple effect of your impact that they mention tells you that's another product you could create. And now you start focusing on your initial impact and all the ripples you're going to create. And the next thing you know, you have a whole suite of products and services that will create your multi-million-dollar impact.
There you go. Okay, great. That's fantastic. That's usually kind of how I take, you know, conclude my show by saying, you know, what are three things that you want people to know that they can take away and actually begin to use so that they can move their business forward?
Yes.
And you actually gave me one, which is, hey, focus on impact. And the way you do that is you measure that impact. And
That's right.
then maybe what are two other things?
So the second thing is to measure the results that you want to create and how they will be created so that you can develop products and services that will deliver that impact.
Great.
So the first thing to do, probably, let's back it up, is to buy the freaking book. If you
Okay.
get focus on impact, all of the next steps are in the book. So
Yes.
let's just say that, right?
That's true.
Focus on
I read
impact gives you the map,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Just follow the map. Trust your instincts.
Right.
And then wake up every single morning. Here's your third thing. And look in the mirror and ask yourself one question.
Okay.
Am I making the impact that I want to be making?
Okay.
Because if the answer is no, then that's a really good reason to get dressed. Because it means you have a lot more impact to make.
Okay. Okay.
Just focus on impact. Because the fact of the matter is that life is far too short to settle for less than we truly want in our business or our lives, right? So focus on impact and then move people to use your products and services so you can make an impact on every life you touch.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Yeah, like I said, I've read both of the books and I found them to be useful tools in guiding me in what I can be doing to become a better entrepreneur. Because basically I've been fortunate to be an entrepreneur all my life, been able to work for myself. And I consider it a blessing. I know some people consider it a bit of a struggle, but the great thing about the focus on impact and shatter your speed limits is that they really do give you a roadmap on how to figure it out, so to speak. Because I think a lot of times people, when they're starting a business, they have a great idea. And I think, they're pretty gung-ho, but then when they run into the bumps in the road, as you did with your situation, as we do all the time as entrepreneurs, because I know I've run into the same type of situations, they get discouraged. And, don't be ashamed to, take a step back and go get a job at JCPenney's or wherever and do what you need to do, but maintain your focus on focusing on impact, or maintain your focus on wanting to do something that hopefully will change the world. I like your one saying that you say all the time, the impact that you can make together, that we can make together. Say that for us, Wendy. I love that.
The impact we make together will be far greater than any we'll ever make alone.
There you go. I love that. I love that idea because that's the other thing I think people who are entrepreneurs need to understand. You can't always do everything. And it took me a while to learn that, but that's a real lesson that people who are entrepreneurs need to understand. I think the whole idea of delegating, how did you kind of develop that skill? Because that's a skill set, to learn how to delegate, the things that you do well are what you do well. But then there's a whole bunch of other things that as a business owner or entrepreneur that have to come together to make the business profitable. How did you learn that skill set to be able to delegate things?
It's actually kind of a funny how I was consulting for a corporation, for a Fortune 500 corporation, who clearly did a lot of things right, or they wouldn't have been a Fortune 500 corporation, right?
Exactly.
And the VP of sales was the one who had brought me in, and he was so stressed out. And I said, have you ever thought about delegating some of this?
Okay.
And he said, I don't know how do you delegate? And I realized wow, I have no idea. I mean,
Okay.
I was telling him that because it was the right consulting thing to say, but frankly, I had never thought about it.
Hmm.
And so I said, give me 24 hours, I'll get back to you. And I went back to my hotel and I really thought about what does it take to delegate?
There you
I
go.
created this whole, me with my steps, right? So I created this whole step by step by step thing. Don't ask me the specifics because it's been a while. I'd have to look it up myself. But what I created for him, I realized, oh my gosh, I should be doing all of that. And so I attended my own seminar.
All right, that's great. That's great. Well, I think we've pretty much kind of covered everything that I hope would get some people on the right track, some people back on track, some people starting some kind of a track, and just really encouraging and motivating people who are entrepreneurs to get themselves in a situation where they can see, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that their idea is really something that they should, hold fast and focus on impact in order for them to really become successful.
You
And right now, with so many people struggling, I think this is almost the perfect time. It's like the perfect storm for a lot of people who unfortunately, had a 9 to 5, but then they found out, oh, wait a minute, hey, it's time. I'm getting laid off. What am I going to do? And so if they come up with an idea and they focus on how to impact, I think that would be phenomenal. I think this year you've seen a lot of that happen. People have come up with, all kinds of different ways to manage this pandemic and to kind of, still survive through it. And some of them have actually been thriving. So that's good. If we all kind of look around and take some ideas and observe some things, and especially look to, being impactful, I think that would really make such a difference. As you say, we can make a bigger impact together than we can by ourselves. So
exactly.
thank you so much for your time and your energy and
Oh,
all of your advice. I strongly recommend people getting Focus on Impact and Shatter Your Speed Limits, because I've read both of them. They're great reads, but more importantly, to me, they were good roadmaps on what you need to do as an entrepreneur to really help yourself become better at it, or at least even get started at it. And don't get discouraged for all the bumps that you're going to get, because you're going to run into obstacles. I mean, we all do. We all do.
absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're scared, just know that that is what is telling you there is something very exciting ahead.
That's a great way to end this show. I love it. Yeah, being scared is a great motivator.